My girlfriend and I had just moved into what felt like the home we'd been dreaming of for ages, the kind of place that made you breathe a little easier the moment you walked through the door, and everything seemed perfect at first. The rooms held the promise of new routines, our rescued cat Bella immediately claimed a sunny spot by the window, and for a while it really did feel like the fresh start we'd wanted. The only odd thing, the one small shadow in an otherwise bright picture, was the house to our right. Renovation had been started and then abandoned, scaffolding and half-fitted boards left in an awkward, incomplete pattern. The owner had removed the old fence to put up a new one and then, for whatever reason, never finished it. So there was this open access between our back gardens and the abandoned property's garden that made the whole stretch feel exposed and oddly porous. Behind that abandoned house, another property sat separated by a fence, and from what little we could see over the top it looked like a shared house where several young men lived. Sometimes when we came home we saw them cutting through the neighbor's back garden as if it were a shortcut to the front street, and at first we shrugged it off. Perhaps they knew the owner or had permission, but that small, casual tolerance between properties would become the thin seam through which everything unsettling leaked. On our first night here, while we were sitting together in the back garden under a sky that finally felt like it belonged to us, we looked up at the row of houses behind ours out of habit and noticed a man staring blankly from a window. He wasn't hidden, there was no furtive movement, just a face framed by the darkness of the room and an expression so flat it made the air go a little cold. No curiosity, no smile, nothing that suggested the ordinary politeness of a new neighbor taking a look, and after half an hour of that unwavering, unsettling stare we went inside because staying out felt foolish and exposed. The next few days settled into something that looked, on the surface, like normal. I went to work, my fiancé unpacked boxes, Bella explored new corners, but then the quiet was broken again one evening when we decided to sit out in the garden. It was dark, the stars were out and we were talking about trivial things to keep the mood calm, when we heard the makeshift wooden board fence being moved and then three men appearing, standing there just staring at us as though they had stepped from shadow into our lives without so much as a hello. I asked, in the tall, polite voice you use when you want a situation diffused, "Are you okay?" because I knew they wouldn't just leave of their own accord. The youngest of them, who looked about 29, had a big bag and offered us some stolen washing-up tablets. We declined. I tried to make a joke because the awkwardness pressed against the ribs of the night. He smiled and said, "Okay," and they walked off, but what lodged itself under my skin was the ease with which they let themselves into our garden as though access were a right, not an intrusion. It felt personal and territorial in a way that two 20-year-olds living alone could not mistake. They began helping themselves into the next-door space more often, lifting the loose sections of the fence and walking across like it was a communal courtyard rather than someone's private back garden. And small acts of entitlement became an ongoing pattern of intimidation that made each day feel like a balancing act between ordinary life and constant vigilance. Then one afternoon, while I was cleaning the front room, two police officers walked around the side of the house and entered that abandoned garden. They lifted the fence, looked around for a few minutes as if checking boxes in a report, and left without explanation. Strange, and yet also a little reassuring that they had been there and seen something. But a few days later they knocked at our door to explain formally that the house behind us was now vacant and that the men had been evicted for antisocial behavior affecting other neighbors as well, which at the time felt like the ending to a nightmare. The threat had been acknowledged, and we allowed ourselves to feel the fragile relief of thinking it would stop there. That sense of relief was short-lived. One day when I was in the bath I heard a loud bang outside and, heart-pounding, hurried to find my girlfriend. She was at the spare bedroom window, the one that faces the empty house's garden, recording something, but when I asked she shushed me and, after a moment, explained that a man we'd never seen before had pointed at our bedroom window, then sprinted full speed toward our house, tried the door handle on the way past as if testing a possibility, then ran back into the garden, flung the broken fence up and started banging on every window of the now empty house. We called the police, they came, watched the footage, took a statement, and left. Their presence felt like a courtesy more than a shield, and the experience left us shaken, asking ourselves the dark, small question of what exactly that man had planned when he tried our handle. A few nights later we lay awake in bed and heard whistling at 2:16 a.m., the kind of low, wolfish whistle sometimes used to harass women, followed by someone tapping our bedroom window. We listened in silence, checked the cameras and, inexplicably, found nothing recorded. Whoever had been there must have left the moment we moved, or the equipment had failed us in the one moment we needed it most. Too scared to sleep, we packed up and stayed the night at my mum's house, seeking safety in someone else's walls, and the next morning when we came back our Ring doorbell had been removed and placed on the ground, the SD card gone. Someone had been back while we were away and had rifled for what they thought mattered, and when we called the police again, the woman on the phone, clear-headed and pragmatic, told us to lock every door and window and warned us that the removal of the camera could indicate intent beyond mere mischief, which made the hair on the back of my neck stand up because the implication was that they might be preparing something worse. The whistling, banging, and attempts to enter continued for weeks. We filed repeated reports and it felt like stacking thin blankets against a winter wind, necessary, but not truly protective. For 3 weeks after that, a new pattern emerged. Late at night, while we were trying to sleep, I glanced at the live feed on my phone and saw a man in a black mask with a hood up, standing in front of our garden with his arms spread wide like an unsettling, obscene parody of crucifixion. He fixed his head at an angle and stared up at our bedroom window as if addressing us directly, then spoke words we couldn't hear because we had moved the camera inside for safety and didn't think to scream. Record. After that he turned and walked to the opposite side of the street where he stood for 30 minutes staring at our house, a static, deliberate presence designed to unnerve. We called the police again and were told, bafflingly, that staring at someone's property is not illegal, a technicality that felt like a dismissal of our fear. And every time we explained what he had done on the lawn or how he had mimed to our windows, they made us feel like we might be overreacting, which compounded our helplessness. Then, at 2:52 a.m. on another night that felt impossibly long, we got a notification. 2 masked men were coming from the side of the house, flashlights sweeping our windows, and one of them, the same man who had haunted us before, held something that looked very much like a crowbar. Standing there watching that footage, my chest hollowed in a way that made sleep impossible. Why us? We are 20, both of us, young women who wanted nothing more than a peaceful home, yet for days on end he would stand across the street pointing, waving, shouting things at our window while fixing us with a blank stare that felt intentionally terrifying. We installed more cameras, we recorded everything, footage that should have been proof. But cameras can be tampered with or taken, and when our equipment failed us or was found destroyed, the sense that our sanctuary had thin, breakable walls grew. The police did what they could, but their hands were tied by laws and by the slow machinery of investigation, and they often returned with procedural advice: lock doors, call if anything escalates, and keep records, all practical, all necessary, and yet insufficient when every ordinary sound in the night became a potential threat and every passerby's glance set my heart racing. We feel powerless in daylight and exhausted by night. We keep documenting, keep calling, keep pleading to be seen and taken seriously, and yet the fear lingers like a persistent shadow, an invisible residue of someone else's choices. We replay footage, we communicate with neighbors, we brace for the worst. We are doing everything right and nothing feels enough, and so each time the front door clicks or a car passes slowly outside our window we flinch and wonder when the next knock will come, who will be standing behind it, and whether the person staring from the dark will ever stop.